There are stories that time cannot erase. There are mysteries that resist decades, investigations, deaths, and logic itself. And there are families that carry a void so deep they can never be whole again. This is the story of the Sodder family, and it begins on the happiest night of the year. It was December 24th, 1945, in the small town of Fayetteville in the state of West Virginia in the United States. World War II had ended only a few months earlier, and the entire world was breathing the relief of a peace that felt nothing short of miraculous. Families gathered, children dreamed of presents, and the Christmas spirit wrapped every street, every glowing window, every home. At the Sodder family house, the energy was even more intense. George Sodder was an Italian immigrant who had arrived in America with little more than the clothes on his back and the determination to build a dignified life. He had succeeded. Through work, sacrifice, and sweat, George had built a trucking company, a solid house, and raised 10 children. 10 children! His wife, Jenny, was the heart of that family, a woman of quiet strength who kept everything running with love and discipline. That Christmas Eve, the younger children refused to sleep. The excitement was simply too great. George was patient, as he always was. He let the children stay up a little longer, playing, talking, living. Around midnight, he turned off the lights in the living room and went to bed. 5 of his children were still awake on the upper floors. Maurice, 14 years old, Martha, 12, Louis, 9, Jenny, 8, and Betty, the youngest, only 5 years old. Then the telephone rang. It was a strange female voice asking for a name George didn't recognize. Jenny hung up, puzzled, and returned to the bedroom. No one in the family could explain that call. Around 1 in the morning, Jenny woke up suddenly. Something was wrong. The air was heavy, too warm for a winter night. And then she saw. The flames were already consuming the roof when she ran from the room. George woke up seconds later and instantly understood what was happening. He ran toward the stairs, calling the children by name, but the flames blocked every path. The heat was unbearable, the flames advancing with brutal speed. George ran outside and looked for the hand ladder he always kept leaning against the side of the house. It was gone. Then he tried to move his company's trucks, parked in the yard, to use them as a rescue platform. The first engine wouldn't start. The second wouldn't either. None of the 3 trucks worked that night. In absolute desperation, George filled buckets with water and hurled them at the flames while screaming until he lost his voice. The other children in the house escaped with their mother and father, but Maurice, Martha, Louis, Jenny, and Betty did not respond. When the firefighters arrived, the house was already a smoldering shell. And then came the moment that would change everything forever. Investigators sifted through the rubble for hours. They were looking for what every fire leaves behind: human remains, bone fragments, teeth, any evidence that 5 children had been inside. They found nothing. Absolutely nothing. A house fire, even an intense one, does not completely destroy human bones. Industrial crematoria burn at much higher temperatures for much longer and still leave identifiable fragments. But at the Sodder house, nothing. No trace of the 5 children. Local authorities declared the children dead of unknown cause and closed the case with a speed that George Sodder would never accept. And so began the second phase of the Sodder family's nightmare. Because if the bones weren't there, where were the children? George began investigating on his own, with the silent obsession of a father who refuses to bury what he cannot touch. And the clues he found did not point to an accident. They pointed to something far darker. Weeks before the fire, a stranger appeared at the Sodder property asking for work. George refused. The man looked at the house with an expression George couldn't name at the time. Months earlier, another stranger had told George, almost like a threat disguised as conversation, that the house would fall victim to the fire and his children would pay a price. George had ignored it. There was no more ignoring. On the night of the fire, neighbors reported seeing an unfamiliar car parked near the Sodder house during the hours the flames were burning. A car no one recognized, with people inside that no one identified. And the ladder that had vanished, and the trucks that wouldn't start, and the telephone that rang at midnight, diverting the family's attention for a few precious minutes. Each detail alone could be a coincidence. Together, they formed a deeply disturbing pattern. George Sodder was a man who wasn't afraid to say what he thought. In a time when the Italian-American community in the United States was divided between pride in their heritage and shame over fascism, George was one of those who spoke loudly. He publicly criticized Mussolini. He defended American democracy in heated arguments, and that, in certain circles, made enemies. The theory George developed over the years was brutal and simple. The children had not died in the fire, they had been taken. The fire was just a cover, and whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. The pain of that thought was twofold. If the children were alive somewhere, why had they never appeared? George Sodder erected a billboard on the highway that ran in front of the land where the house had stood. The billboard displayed the children's photos and the ages they would have reached over the years, and a direct message for anyone who knew anything. It stood there for decades. Whoever drove down that highway saw the billboard and felt the weight of a family that refused to disappear along with its children. In 1967, 22 years after the night of the fire, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside the envelope was a black and white photograph, an unknown young man looking directly at the camera with a gaze that Jenny Sodder immediately recognized as familiar. On the back of the photo, a short and vague message that clarified nothing but made everything more disturbing. No one could identify the sender. No one could locate the young man in the photograph. But Jenny spent the rest of her life convinced it was the face of her son, Louis, grown, living somewhere she would never discover. George Sodder died in 1969 without answers. Jenny continued the fight alone for 20 more years. The billboard only came down from the highway after she died in 1989. No American authority ever officially reviewed the case. No investigation was ever reopened with new technology or evidence. The 5 Sodder children were never found, neither living nor dead. What really happened on Christmas Eve 1945? Was it the flames that took those 5 children, or was it something or someone far colder and more calculated that removed them from that house? Some questions have no simple answers, and this is one of them. The complete story is in the full video here on the channel, because there are details that change everything and you need to know them.